Hello, everyone. Fox here, straight from his quarantined bunker. And since we're all in the lockdown, I figured it'd be a good time to have a good old think about State of Decay 2. Specifically, we're going to reflect about how good is the State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition update, especially since I just got through with that whole Nightmare Zone playthrough in it. So, obviously, I want you guys to express your thoughts down in the comment section. We'll find out who likes it, who it doesn't like about it, who's just kind of meh about it. And what I'm going to do, we're just going to go over a few issues. I'm going to give you it's going to be kind of a casual review. I'm not writing some kind of scientific dissertation about this. I played it. I beat it on Nightmare Zone. Now I'm going to tell you what I think. One of the things I'm not going to address is the issue of graphics because, frankly, I just didn't pay attention to the graphics. I'm also not someone who really pays attention to graphics in general. But anyways, let's get started. I got a little bullet list of things I want to talk about. And the first one is going to be DLC availability. How good of an idea was that? What was the impact of making the DLC freely available to everyone? Oh, and enjoy some random gameplay in the background. I'm not sure what game I'm going to do or what kind of game. Maybe I'll do some brand new game. Maybe, I don't know. Just enjoy the gameplay that will help distract you so that, it's not just me talking. Anyways, so all of the DLC is available under the condition that you either buy the game or you have the Microsoft or the Xbox Game Pass. And is that a really good idea? And overall, yeah, I think it's a pretty good idea. Now, I'm not privy to the economic status of Undead Labs, but I imagine that the DLC has probably run its course in terms of its major sales, so making it available to everybody. I mean, they're also getting. I know they're making money from being part of the Xbox program, where the Game Pass program. Apparently, they do get paid as for participating in that. But the point is that we're probably at the point where a lot of people wouldn't be buying the DLC. And the reason, my only justification for this is that whenever I do poke around in Daybreak, I found it to be increasingly harder to find groups. I would often be just playing by myself, or I'd have one, sometimes two people, but a lot of times you wouldn't be finding a full group in Daybreak, which kind of implies that, people aren't buying the DLC. But what are the impacts of making the DLC widely available? Well, one thing is there are definitely some insanely good DLC items, namely the Independence Day items, specifically the pyro launcher and the fireworks crafting station, which is used to make its ammo. That's like the single best DLC item in the game. Just completely changes the experience regardless of what difficulty you're on. Whether you're on Nightmare Zone or Standard Zone, the Pyro Launcher just absolutely plows through everything. Just insanely powerful DLC. And then on top of that, there are some pretty strong Daybreak items. That said, you do have to play the Daybreak Zone, or Daybreak game mode, rather. And I've historically been heavily opposed to Daybreak, and that has not changed. I can't stand playing that mode. I think it's super, super boring. But the other DLCs, like Heartland, they don't really have much of an impact on the main game, especially when they made the bounty items for the replica versions of the Echo weapons in Heartland. And even those Echo weapons, they're good, but they're just not on the same level as the Pyro Launcher, just not on the same level as the some of the Daybreak items and even the Red Talon characters themselves. So adding the DLC overall, I think that was a good idea. I do think that makes the game more exciting. It allows people to actually have access to some of those neat things. At the same time, though, if you pre-ordered the game, those are not available, and apparently the Ultimate Edition items aren't available. So people are constantly asking, oh, how do you get the Evo, or how do you get the Grass Cutter? Well, the Evo is an Ultimate Edition item, and the Grass Cutter is a Prepper's pre-order pack. That was the Microsoft pre-order. And yeah, those are all those, the Evo's not a super strong weapon, but the Grass Cutter is one of the best bladed weapons in the game, especially insane that you can get it so early in the game. And yeah, the DLC makes a really big difference. But overall, I think that's a pretty good idea. I think it definitely makes the Juggernaut Edition feel more like it. I think it's one of the main things that makes the Juggernaut Edition feel like a Juggernaut, like it's just packed full of content, is just the availability of the DLC. Oh, man. No, I'm not getting coronavirus. What I'm getting is like inhaling Mountain Dew into my lungs virus. So the next subject is going to be Providence Ridge itself. And what do I think about the map? Is it contributing to Juggernaut Edition being really good? Well, the map's obviously something that people have really, really requested. Without a doubt, it's the most decorated, the best looking map in terms of just the amount of care and detail put into it. But I mean, I don't think that's too surprising given that, they're able to look at the old maps and say, hey, this is what we like, this is what we didn't like, this could have been decorated better. And they're also able to look at the old maps and think, well, what would be a really unique map? So I think the fact that they come back and make another map, I don't think it's surprising. I think there's an expectation that it would be the best decorated map, like the most thematic map of them all. So that's kind of like to be expected. But I think even with that expectation, I think the map does look nice. I do like, even though they weren't able to do weather, I think the fogging is kind of like meeting us halfway, so I think that was a really good idea as well. Another comment that keeps coming up on the map is the density of loot, and some people don't like that there's a large swaths of territory that don't have anything to loot. I'm just the opposite. Like, the less areas there are to loot, the better. I mean, there's obviously a limit. If there's only like one building to loot, that would obviously be unacceptable, but I'm not crazy about just looting everything. If you watch the playthrough, you'll notice there's huge sections of the map that I didn't even bother looting. And so it doesn't really bother me that there are areas where there's not a lot to loot. But at the same time, the loot does seem to be concentrated into like the city centers, and that's how I like it. I basically want to have a little bit of stuff to explore here and there. Oh, like a gas station off the road, a restaurant off the side of the road, a few cabins here and there. I don't mind there being little pockets of stuff to loot, but I mainly like driving to an area where I know there's going to be a ton of materials and just getting all my materials in this one area. Like in Drucker County, there's this little area, there's like a hill with a cul-de-sac, and it's got like 5 buildings that are under construction, and all of them give you building materials. Well, most of the time they give you building materials. I really like it when it is done like that. I really like strips and blocks and dense areas, and then areas that are just interesting to look at. And in Providence Ridge, I'm mainly talking about like the timber fields. Those areas, they don't have a lot to loot, but they're interesting to drive through. I'm like, oh, well, look at all this area that's been deforested. So overall, it didn't bother me that there were areas that didn't have a whole lot to loot. It's not something that really came to mind. Another one is, this is the map that has the most elevation change. You drive up and down. I don't really care about that too much either way. Like, driving uphill and downhill, that doesn't really bother me too much. I mean, like, you notice it that driving uphill slows you down and driving downhill makes you go faster. But honestly, it just felt like there was that one area that was like a really big hill. Basically, that when you're transitioning from the beginning part of the game to one of the other areas, there's just that big old sloping hill that goes through the deforested area. But aside from that, I didn't really feel like there was like a humongous amount of elevation change. So as long as you avoided that area, or even if you didn't go out of your way to avoid it, but if your journey just didn't take you through there, you didn't really notice it. But in the beginning, I certainly did notice that there was a big change in elevation. And overall, even though I noticed it, I'm kind of like, it's not really something that I have an opinion on either way. It's just not that important. And then lastly, what is more relevant is the ease of travel. And I know I would have to play on the map a little bit more in order to have a more thought-out opinion on the ease of travel, because on one end, I can say, yeah, it looks like this is a map where you have to drive on the road for the vast majority of the time, which is annoying. But on the other hand, the map is so new and interesting to look at that I haven't... Basically, the novelty of the map, of seeing the map, hasn't worn off on me yet. But maybe if I played on Providence Ridge like 5 times and like I'm just used to all the sights and nothing is interesting looking anymore, maybe that's when I would begin to notice that, hey, it's just taking forever in order to actually get from point A to point B. So who knows? That's something where perhaps my opinion of it would evolve over time. But for now, it doesn't really bother me. I didn't really feel like the driving was too bad, but at the same time, I also really wasn't paying attention to it. So that brings us to one of the more important ones, the bases. Bases are obviously one of the most important features in State of Decay 2. I mean, really one of the big things people talk about is what is the best base to move into, because the base is really its own character. You know, you have your actual player characters, but each base is almost like its own kind of character. Really, I would say it is its own kind of character. So one thing that's kind of interesting is they went back on the total number of bases. Normally a region has 8 bases, but this one only has 5. But on the other hand, it feels like there's not as much redundancy on the bases. It gets to the point a lot faster. You got your intro base, 2 different mid-game bases, and then you've got your 2 end-game bases. And I don't have any problem with that. I like that it gets a little more to the point. I don't really feel like there is a loss of options there. I feel like more than that might have, unless they just had like a really, really crazy idea. I feel like any other bases beyond that would have just been like subtle variations of one another. So while there are less bases, I feel like the bases are not as redundant. And at the same time, I feel like that means that it also means the bases are more impactful. Like each base feels like it hits way harder and does something a lot more distinct. And as a result, they have more purpose. I feel like each base really does something. I don't know about the first 3 bases, but the most important ones are the 2 end bases: the fire station and the lumber mill. The fire station and lumber mill are so different from each other that you can really, really take the time to think like which one do you like better and which one do you want to live in. And I definitely think there'll be debate on which one is better, and I think that's good. I don't think there should be like a really obvious like, oh, this is distinctly the best base. I think that's kind of boring. So I really like the way they did the bases. At the same time, even though these are the biggest bases in the game, they're not like super mind-blowingly different. They are still just bigger bases. The lumber mill probably does the best job of actually doing something different, having the ability to produce materials. I know that the fire station, it has the bell that you can shoot, but to me that just isn't very important, like especially on Nightmare Zone, because the zombies are just so heavily attracted to you that, you know, any kind of distraction that you make, it's going to be a really fleeting distraction just because the zombies are just so hell-bent on prioritizing the player. Like you saw, if you saw the episode where I was using the zombies to attack the enemy humans, and if I wasn't using scent block, those zombies are very quick to change targets to begin prioritizing me, because that's just the way that the Nightmare Zone works. And overall, even if you're on Standard Zone, you could get the same effect by just throwing firecrackers, because the zombies are distracted by firecrackers even in the middle of combat. So I just felt like the lumber mill just is it's more unique than the, fire station. On the other hand, the fire station is really good if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to really take the time to customize the base. Like you want a base where most of the stuff is done for you and there's a little bit of room for you to personalize it yourself. I think that's where the fire station really, really comes in handy. But overall, I think the bases are a step in the right direction. I don't think they're mind-blowing. I think they could go way farther than they did, but nevertheless, I still think it's a step in the right direction. That brings us to heavy weapons. This is the first one where I'm going to talk about, this one was kind of a letdown. Now, I will say in heavy weapons, I could definitely use them more and try to go out of my way to find more of the bright spots on them, but I've been using them for a bit and they just do not impress me. And I think that's one of the bigger disappointments or letdowns of the Juggernaut Edition, because this is the first time. This is basically the second coming of the crossbow. In a lot of ways, heavy weapons kind of feel like the melee version of crossbows, because the whole idea of crossbows is that they've got these awesome, super strong advantages. Like they don't break down, the ammo can be reused, they're perfectly quiet. But the drawback to them is that they were going to be a lot less forgiving to use, which, just like with the heavy weapons, means that it requires more skill. The crossbows were designed for more skilled players to use, people who would be able to compensate for the slow firing rate, would be able to get used to the arrow travel time. And if you did take the time to get used to it, you would see just how effective those weapons are. Like, I use all of the crossbows in Nightmare Zone. Even though I have a favorite, the Echo X3 repeating crossbow, I still use any crossbow I can get because it's just such a powerful tool. But going back to the heavy weapons, I just feel like that did not carry over. Even though the heavy weapons are kind of like the melee version of crossbows, they just do not have the impact, so to speak, that the crossbows had. And I think they just need to be stronger. Some of the problems I think with them is that they're really fragile. They break down really easily. Honestly, I think they should be durability immune. I think that they would be the only melee weapons that have that characteristic, but I think they should be just that. I think they should be durability immune. Like when I think of, if I go to Home Depot and I see a sledgehammer for sale, I'm like, that thing is not going to break if I were to swing it repeatedly at humans. And that's because the sledgehammer was designed. Like, it was designed to strike harder objects than the bones of a human, and it was designed to do that for a very long time. Same with like a wood chopping axe. That's designed to split wood in half, something that's harder than, like zombies. And it was designed, it wasn't designed to like split wood in half for a while, then it broke. It's designed to split wood in half for a really long time. And I think by that logic, that should have been one of the big perks, that these weapons are so sturdy, they just completely ignore durability loss. Another problem I had with them is I don't like losing the drop kick for when you take the powerhouse. You get powerhouse, but then when you use a heavy weapon, the drop kick is replaced with the cross check. Some people say they can still use the drop kick. I haven't been able to do that. They say, you need to have a running start. You don't need a running start with the drop kick. Like I had a series of episodes that were like challenge episodes, and someone said I should drop kick a plague guard to death, and I did. I drop kicked the plague guard to death, and I did not need to get a running start in order to drop kick the plague guard. And on also the cross check itself, it's like the kick, and it's just not very useful. It uses up a lot of stamina, and when you're using up as much stamina as you are with a heavy weapon, you just need better results. You really just need to clobber the enemies and just beat the crap out of them. So that's the problem I have with heavy weapons. The stamina usage, I don't think that's a problem, because that should be the penalty of them. The slow speed of them, I don't think that's a problem either. That's just something that should be part of you working around. Just like with the crossbow, you got to get used to the arrow travel time and the long reloads. With the heavy weapons, you should be getting used to the stamina consumption and the slower swing speed. But in return, you should have a weapon that's indestructible, and it should just like plow through the enemies. It should be a lot more lethal, give a lot more knockback at the expense of you building around or using items to get around the stamina loss. So overall, maybe my opinion will change if I use the heavy weapon even more, but overall, I was just underwhelmed by them. However, on the other hand, I still think that they were a good idea. I still think they are a welcome addition. So, and that might sound strange, because didn't I just spend so and so many minutes bashing it? Well, there we go, again, another heavy weapons pun, impact and bashing. Anyways, but I don't think I would much rather them add in weapons that are kind of disappointing but are totally new than reskinned weapons that are, so-so to decent but are just more of the same thing. And that's because what State of Decay 2 really needs are mechanical changes more than cosmetic changes. So even though the heavy weapons, at least thus far, and I do plan to make a second opinion video and maybe even a third opinion video on heavy weapons, I still think it was a really good idea to do it. And they should have done it anyways, and they did do it. And I just think that they could be a lot better. So, those are the subjects I want to talk about. Let's wrap things up with the question, is Juggernaut Edition good? And my rating is that Juggernaut Edition is good. It's not great or like amazing or awesome, but it's good. I don't think it's on the same level as State of Decay 1's Breakdown. Breakdown was just insanely Breakdown was one of those expansions that was exactly what the game needed. It needed a way where if you weren't interested in the story, like if you've beaten because State of Decay 1, the progress was campaign gated. So it gave you a way to get around the story if you didn't want it. It gave you a way to continuously play the game, to reset the map. And then it gave you a way to increase the difficulty so that you could play to your heart's content and then set the game down whenever you were done, and you didn't have to worry about running out of supplies or anything. So that was an update that absolutely fixed it. Then on top of that, they had the awesome challenge system that unlocked the super characters, basically like a way cooler version of State of Decay 2's Bounty Broker. And those were all really, really neat. And that was just that's why people remember the breakdown update for State of Decay 1 so fondly. Whereas State of Decay 2, the really good updates for it, you had Zed Hunter. Zed Hunter, I still think, is one of the best updates. It introduced a new brand of weapons, the crossbows, which had very impactful. They're some of the best weapons in the Nightmare Zone. It added in the advanced biochem station and the various, like the scent block. Insanely strong. And they were so strong, I actually said they weren't very good because at the time, Nightmare Zone didn't exist, and I thought they were just super overkill in Standard Zone. But in Nightmare Zone, they're just absolutely insane. Some of the best items in the entire game. And then on top of that, they added in the mysterious quests, including a pretty difficult one, the crazed Red Talon character who could have the gas grenade launcher that's actually super dangerous, especially on Nightmare Zone. And that was just like a free update. And that was a fantastic update. Zed Hunter, one of the best ones. Then you had the Choose Your Own Apocalypse update. That was kind of like... Choose Your Own Apocalypse is kind of like the the Breakdown update, because Choose Your Own Apocalypse, it brought the thing that State of Decay 2 really needed, and it was a higher difficulty. It added in the Dread Zone and the Nightmare Zone. It didn't add nearly as much cool stuff as the Breakdown did. Breakdown brought in the refreshing map, skipped the campaign, and the challenges to unlock the characters, whereas Choose Your Own Apocalypse, it was just the difficulties. Nevertheless, it was still a very, very impactful update. Then you had the Bounty Broker. Bounty Broker is okay. I feel like if the Bounty Broker launched alongside the Choose Your Own Apocalypse update, that would have made it feel a lot better. But as a standalone update, I thought the Bounty Broker was kind of like meh. And that's because most of the items that the Bounty Broker has, they kind of stink. He does have some really good ones, but most of them are just not that great. And then finally, you've got this one here, the Juggernaut Edition. The Juggernaut Edition, I guess, is kind of like Breakdown 2 or like Choose Your Own Apocalypse 2. It's the next... If Choose Your Own Apocalypse was the first major update, this is the second major update. Something that really had a transformative effect on the game. Brought a brand new map in. That's something they've never really done. I guess they did it with Lifeline, but Lifeline's counterpart in State of Decay 2 is Heartland, so they cancel each other out. So the Providence Ridge, that's like a standalone thing, never before done in State of Decay. They brought in a brand new weapon style. That's really awesome. That's something that State of Decay 2 really needed. It was really a welcome change to have a totally new mechanic, especially a fan favorite mechanic from the previous game that apparently the development time didn't quite fit in. That said, I think the main thing that held Juggernaut Edition back from being good to awesome, or maybe great, is that I just think that the heavy weapons needed to be more impactful. I think if the heavy weapons were just like the crossbows, just like super awesome, like just... You could see that, okay, it's going to take some practice, but once I get the hang of it, this is going to be like a beast of a weapon. I feel like if that were the case, then I think, yeah, I would say that Juggernaut Edition is great. But as it stands, that's not the case, so I'm going to say it's good. The bases are one of the better features as well. Like the bases, they get to the point quickly. There's not a whole bunch of redundant bases. I think the lumber mill is really awesome just because it adds another base that does something really distinctly unique. The ability to make materials, which is really valuable since now you can not only create materials to compensate for material loss, but you can create materials for parts loss. So overall, really good. 5 large facilities, kind of like a little like bonkers there, but very interesting. And overall, that is what I think. I think that Juggernaut Edition is a pretty good update. I think that the game still needs more mechanical updates. I think what we need are more ways to play the game. rather than cosmetic features, but it's also possible that maybe we're just reaching the limit of what State of Decay 2 can do. Maybe the desire for advanced mechanics, a more distinctive transition from early game to mid game to late game, and more things to do in the late game, like some kind of like awesome project to work on. Maybe that's just not stuff that is ideal for State of Decay 2. Maybe that's something that is material for State of Decay 3. So overall, that's what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good is Juggernaut Edition? And if you can't come up with a number, do you think is it just use a generic word? Is it good? Is it great? Awesome? Is it just blah? Is it stink? Does it suck? Is it garbage? Just let me know down in the comment section, and let me know what you think of my reaction to it is. That's what I think about Juggernaut Edition. So how good is State of Decay 2 Juggernaut Edition? It's good. I liked it. I enjoyed my time with it. I thought it was pretty good, and I still want to play more State of Decay 2. So, I didn't play it and just go, oh, God, get this crap away from me. I'm done. I did my time. I'm a free man now. No, I still have a desire to play the game, and I do have a desire to mess around with the heavy weapons some more. But, yeah, so overall, not bad. At any rate, like this video if it was entertaining. Hopefully it helped you cope a bit with the quarantine that we're stuck in. Like the video, though, if it was entertaining. Subscribe for future State of Decay 2 content. Of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.